Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Benton. It is vampires. It's a host of damned souls of telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. You can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi, everybody. See what you've done to me now?
I know. Sorry.
We're going to have these in bloopers, aren't we? We are. You're going to do this to me one day. You're going to stick it in bloopers. Hi, everybody. This is Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK radio network. I'm here again tonight with my co-host.
Waiting for it. Starts with an M.
Mark Johnson.
There we go. I knew you'd get it eventually.
Oh, gosh almighty. I'm so sorry, Mark. But,
well,
I meet up with so many people in my life on the internet and one thing or another.
Yeah, we've only been working
names. I'm sorry.
We've only been working together for 8 years or so. So
yeah, but I just want to call you Mark or Farkle because it's so much easier for me. Because since you told me that was your nickname, that your grandmother gave you?
My grandmother and my aunts.
Yeah, and it just goes with me. I love Markle Farkle.
Okay, I'll change that to my stage name. How's that?
All right, then Markle Farkle, Mark Johnson.
There we go. Plus, I know you're tired tonight, so...
Yes, I am tired. I am very tired. It's been a hot day, and I've been in the pool most of the day. Not most of the day, most of the afternoon. After I finished doing some work, I went in the pool.
Nice.
Floated around on my lie-low, and it bloody thing burst.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you have to stop eating so much.
Shush. It's nothing to do with weight. It's the fact that it had a slow puncture.
Oh.
It slowly started to go down, didn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you put so much weight on something, it just starts bursting at the seams.
Oh, I'm going to do you. I really am going to do you.
Hey,
you know that?
I'm one to talk.
You are not going to get away with that Markle Farkle with a big nose.
I'm one to talk. I've regained too much of the weight I lost, and I need to get that under control soon, or I'm going to be fat again.
So you call me fat, dude?
Yeah.
Okay.
I admit, I've gotten a little chubby. I need to get back to work on it.
Listen, darling, my curves are all in the right place still. That's not bad for my age. Mind you, a few things are starting to defy gravity, but otherwise, I'm talking about eye bags, boy.
I thank you for clarifying that. I thought I was going to need some brain bleach there for a minute.
Do you know something I saw on Facebook the other day? You cut off a piece of 2 little strips of banana skin and put them under your eye, and it's like a miracle cure. It gets rid of your eye bags in seconds.
Oh.
The only time I get eye bags is when I'm working so hard.
Yes.
When I'm up working halfway through the night. So.
Nope, you could be working with...
I haven't got a wrinkle, and that's pretty good. You've got plenty of wrinkles, you have.
Working with banana skins under your eyes.
Yeah, you just put them under your eyes, right, and relax for a little while, and I think it's something in the actual banana skin, the potassium, maybe, I don't know.
Could be.
But it seems to work.
Oh. You learn something new every day. As far as Facebook goes, I wouldn't know. I got a 3-day vacation from Facebook.
Put a banana skin on your nose, huh? Might shrink it.
Funny.
Well, you did start the fat joke.
I did, and I deserve it.
So you've been away to the coast. You've been down on the coast this weekend.
Yeah, we had
getting yourself into all sorts of problems or troubles.
Well, I mean, we had our bank holiday, as you call it, Labor Day. So we had a 3-day weekend.
Boy?
What's that?
Who was a naughty boy?
Well, I just made a little post on Facebook that they didn't like, and I got a 3-day vacation.
No, yeah. I'm not talking about that.
Oh, we're talking about
dancing away in the sea.
Well, yes. Saturday night, we, my wife, her sister, and our niece, we went down to the shore for 3 days for the holiday weekend and had a good time, and then wound up sneaking out onto the beach after dark, which is a no-no because the beach closes. We were out there about 11 o'clock at night, walking on the beach and laughing and having a little drinky. And the police showed up and kicked us off.
Do you know, this doesn't happen here. The beaches don't close at night. And one of my favourite things to do is to take the dog down to the beach, down to one of the beaches in Wales, get fish and chips, sit on the beach eating fish and chips and in the dark and just listening to the waves.
Oh, I love it. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
but
absolutely beautiful.
But here in New Jersey, it's they kick everybody off to keep the riffraff out, I guess. I don't know. So instead, we wandered around and ran through some sprinklers and just behaved like a bunch of preschoolers. But it was fun.
I know, I've seen the videos.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, why not? Crumbs. You deserve it. You really deserve to go crazy. The rest of the world's gone crazy. You might as well go crazy as well.
Might as well, we're along for the ride right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But we're not going to talk about that.
Nope.
Instead, we've got some great paranormal themed things to talk about tonight. In fact,
that's right.
Let me go ahead and introduce our guest. So tonight, our guest is author and spiritual teacher Bridget Finklaire. Or is it Finklaire? Bridget, you're going to have to correct me on that one because I'm atrocious with names sometimes.
It's Finklaire.
Finklaire. Thank you.
You did well.
Thank you. So Bridget is a qualified and experienced psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and healer, and was a professional therapist in London's Harley Street. Leaving England in 2012 for Cape Town, South Africa, where she lives with her husband. She loves teaching, writing, and speaking. So welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I think this is one of the farthest guests we've had on our show. I think we might have done Australia once.
We've done Australia.
Yeah, Australia.
Oh,
once.
I think, Australia's maybe a little bit further.
A little bit further out. But, this is the wonders of the internet and Skype and connecting the world.
Now, Bridget, totally. you don't go running around on the beach causing a problem, do you?
No, I would never do that. I actually live near the beach, but we're on curfew at the moment with the whole lockdown silliness. So I think we are supposed to be in by about 11 o'clock or something, or 10 o'clock at night. But also, it's not quite the same here. I don't think I'd want to really walk on the beach at night unless I was in the middle of nowhere, because it's not really safe to walk around at night in South Africa on the beach in the dark. But I have done it when I lived in England and when I've been in Europe, and it's lovely. And I like you, I love to hear the waves when it's dark. In fact, I can hear the waves from my garden here, so I can hear them. I can't see them from there, not at night anyway.
See,
but no walking around on the beach.
I'm originally from Los Angeles in California, and the surf in on the West Coast from the Pacific is a lot louder and bigger than the East Coast here in New Jersey because of the way the winds move across the earth. So I used to go camping with my family up at a place called Pismo Beach, and there's a campground over the dunes, and we would, at night, I'd lay out in a tent, and at night, all night long, you hear the surf crashing, and it was just so peaceful. I loved it.
I think some people can keep. I know that I love to hear it, but if it's really loud, I lived in a house once which was right on a beach, and the beach was quite steep, so you really heard the waves crashing in. And I'm on the Atlantic side, and that would keep me awake. So I like to have that nice, happy, sweet spot in the middle where I can hear the waves, but they're not too loud.
Yeah.
So, Bridget, there's lots that we're going to talk with you about tonight. You're not only being a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, you're also an author with a new book out, Red Dress.
Correct, yes. Just been launched 30th of July in England and 1st of August in the USA. So just been out just over a month now.
Now, is this a fiction book?
It is indeed. It's a novel, fiction, loosely follows some of my life in that the central character lives in London. She's stressed out. She's got 2 children, and she's a Harley Street therapist. Partly because, we write about what we know, but otherwise she's fictionalized. And so is most of the storyline. Though some of the things that happened to her have happened to me. And then she's not really me because she's just embarking on this spiritual journey of awakening. So she's going in with some trepidation and dipping her toes in the water and is not quite sure about it, whereas I've been on a spiritual journey for about 30 years. So there's parts of me in other characters as well, but it is a fiction. It's fun. It's a page turner. There's bits that are witty. There's bits that are sad. There's bits that are serious. But one of the things about it is that everything in Red Dress, in terms of the spiritual path that the central character, the protagonist, Katie, takes, they're all real, authentic things. So, for example, she meditates, she does yoga, she's a Reiki master, and all of those things that she does, they're real things. So you can just take it as a fun story, or if you want to learn from it, there's actually a lot of wisdom in that book. And it's all true. And there are things that you can go and find out for yourself if you want to do them. A lot of pearls of wisdom woven into the story so that it's accessible and fun, but you can learn if you want to as well.
Now, when did you said you've been on your own spiritual quest for about 30 years. What prompted you to take this journey, and what avenues or what directions have you gone in?
Yeah, great question, Mark. So I think I believe that we're all kind of born, people who go onto a spiritual journey probably kind of know that before they're born. Something normally happens in people's lives that set them on that journey. And for me, it was actually that I had quite a challenging childhood. Mentally and emotionally quite a challenging childhood. And I just kind of kept faking it till I made it. And I kind of went to live up in London, and I just got on with the world and had a big mask on so that nobody could see the real me behind. But there was a lot of things that were wrong with my life. And but I just chose to ignore it and keep busy and keep working. But what happened was I had children. So when I had my daughter, it's forced me to stop. I gave up my career in public relations, and I had to give up running, and I had to be still and feed this baby and look after this baby. And as the minute you stop, you start to see where the cracks are. And I think I realized that my own parents were not a great role model for parenting. And I was struggling when I had my second child 2 years later, my son. I found I was struggling, and I wanted to get some help. So I ended up going on a journey with therapy and counselling. But at the same time, because I'd been at home looking after babies, I'd got into feng shui, which had only just come into England in those days. And we're talking, well, my daughter's 29, so coming up for 30. So we're talking almost 30 years ago. Feng shui had just come in, and I thought I want to do some of that. So I think I've had this kind of dual journey in a way. On the one hand, I was going for counselling to try and unpack some of the stuff that was going on for me as a mother. I wanted to be the best mum I could be, really be a great mum to these beautiful kids that I had. And on the other hand, I'd becoming more and more interested in the esoteric, and having left work, I had time to pursue it. So this dual avenue kind of opened up to me.
Now, what got you into not only psychotherapy, but one thing that really fascinates me is hypnotherapy?
I think sometimes when you choose a spiritual path of awakening, the steps are almost given to you externally. So I just knew I didn't want to go back into public relations, but I also knew I didn't want to be an absolute full-time mother, particularly when my kids were going back to school. And I was working as a feng shui consultant by then because I'd trained. And I realized that a lot of people wanted me to go in and fix things in their house in order to fix something else in their life. So maybe they had bad relationships and they thought I could go in and fix the relationship corner and that would fix all the problems. Well, to some degree, it might do, but they may still have dysfunctional relationship patterns. So I realized that a lot of people were calling upon me to do things that I felt were much more in the domain of therapy. And I'd had this year or two of counseling myself, and I felt this was something I'd be good at and I would enjoy doing. But I didn't want to go into the sort of Freudian and Jungian psychoanalysis, which takes a long time to train for a start off, and I still had kids. And also I didn't think that was very effective. I wanted to be really effective. So I ended up training. I took my kids one day to the library and I found a leaflet for a company that trained people in brief solution-focused therapy and hypnotherapy. So I went along for this little weekend introduction to hypnosis. And it just fascinated me. It is a fascinating subject. And I found I could just do it fairly easily. And it was like a duck to water, and I loved it. So ended up doing the entire training, which was actually in psychotherapy, but with hypnotherapy. It was quite a basic hypnotherapy course. So actually after that, I went and explored the therapy side in a little bit more depth. And then I also ended up exploring the hypnosis side because it's a very, very powerful tool to work with. So you can get change quite quickly. So I wanted to go in and sort of learn how to do regression work and past life regression work and all of these other sort of tools that you can use in the box. And I think if you're trained as a psychotherapist and a hypnotherapist, you can use a lot of what you've learned in psychology and psychotherapy within the medium of hypnosis, and then it becomes very, very powerful. So I loved working with hypnosis and hypnotherapy. It was great fun.
Do you still do that? Sorry, Mark. Do you still do that, Bridget?
Look, I keep my hand in, and occasionally I do, but I'm essentially now an author and a spiritual teacher, so there's not that much time to do that. But I train people in this offering that I have called the Bone Circle, and within that we do meditations and guided meditations, and I do still use hypnotic language phrases and things like that within them. I'm not taking them into past lives, but I am taking them into other realms, so to speak. So that I use it in that domain, and every so often I'm kind of called to work with someone one-to-one, not very often, but every so often. And when I mean called to work by someone, I mean spirit tell me you need to work with this person. And very often that will include hypnosis. So somebody will come into my sphere, I will get the nod, so to speak. I will know I need to work with them, and invariably hypnosis will be part of that because it's such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not a practicing hypnotherapist or psychotherapist, but I still do use all of those things that I've learnt.
Okay. Well, both of us have been regressed.
Mark's been
regressed. I've been, I don't know whether I was or not. I went to see a hypnotist to stop smoking, believe it or not. But he put me, with hypnotherapy, if I'm right, you're still aware of your surroundings, what's going on around you. You're not completely out of it, are you?
That's
so if
right.
an aeroplane goes over the top, over the roof of the house, you will hear it. Yes,
that's right. And it depends because there is a measurable scale of hypnosis, and I think what people don't get is it's a natural thing that we all go in and out of all the time. So if you've ever got lost in a book or lost in a film,
things.
and daydreams of just before you wake up, just before you go to sleep, or you've just lost track of time with something. Those are all hypnotic states. Or if you're driving a really familiar route that you go all the time, and then today you were actually going to go somewhere else, and you ended up and you go, oh, I've missed the turning because you're going the normal way. It's a kind of programming. So there's that at the very light end of the scale, and then you can go into kind of like a light relaxation. But some people who are highly suggestible can go very deeply into hypnosis, and they might not remember all those things. They might not hear the plane go across the roof. I remember having a client once. I very rarely did stop smoking because it wasn't really my thing, but every so often I did, and I'd get somebody in, and they'd always go, "You're my last resort." And I remember having somebody in the office who, I think it was a stop smoking, and while they were in my office, one of those pneumatic drills was going outside. They were doing something with the road, and there was nothing I could do about it. And it was so loud. You know how loud they are. And all I said to them was, and every time you hear that noise, you're just going to go deeper and deeper into hypnosis. And I was literally right up by their ear, almost shouting in their ear, because I thought, this isn't going to work. At the end, I said, I brought the person out of hypnosis, and normally when I do smoking hypnosis, I go, do you want a cigarette? And they go, no. So I kind of know that it's there. But I do very few of them. I did very few of them. But I said to this client, I'm really sorry about the noise. And he said, what noise? So
didn't hear
it does depend on how deep. Yeah, he didn't hear it. It depends on how deep you are.
Yeah, well, I went to stop smoking.
Did it work?
I'll tell you the story. He put me under.
You're going to be appalled at this one, Bridget.
He took me back to when I was born, and then he took me into a previous life, and then he kept saying, right, you're dead now. You've passed over. What are you seeing? What he was trying to do was find out whether there was a life after death. That's what he was trying to do. I went there to stop smoking.
Why did you do that if you were there to stop smoking?
It was abuse.
Because he was taping the whole session, and he gave me a tape afterwards. That's how I know all this. But at the very end of the session, he went through you don't want a cigarette anymore. Cigarettes smell nasty to you. They taste terrible, da. Anyway, the session finished. I paid him the money. I left the house, got as far as his front gate, and lit up a cigarette.
Yeah, you see, that's what happens when you have just suggestion therapy, which is why I used to get people I remember my first one like that, who came to my office and he said, do you do stop smoking? And I said, not really. It's not my thing. I'm a therapist. I'm a psychotherapist. And he said, I just heard somebody told me that you were really good, and could I come? And all right, come on then. And he sat there and he said, well, I've done Alan Carr, and I've been to, and he's reeled off different hypnotherapists. Been to this hypnotherapist and that hypnotherapist. I've done the gum. I've been to the NHS. I've done this, that, and the other. And he said, and you're my last hope. And he was really serious. And I just turned around and I said, oh, well, no pressure then. And of course it broke the ice, and he laughed. And it took me a couple of hours to work with him because I had to unhook all sorts of stuff in the past. But it's not past life regression. You've got to go back to find out what made that person start smoking in the first place, and why it's so important to them that they can't give it up, because that's actually what's happening when people can't give up. There's your subconscious mind has got a very, very good reason for keeping you smoking. So you've got to go and negotiate with it, really. So, yeah. So just suggestion works for about a third of the people that go. But for the other for another third, it might hold for a little while. And for another third, it's going to be like you. You're going to go down the path and light up a cigarette on the way home.
Well, the whole thing with hers.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Let me just tell you this. When I went to see this person, right, I went with a friend of mine. And he also done her. He'd done the same thing, took her back in previous lives. Apparently, she was a witch in Paris. She got burnt in the square and one thing or another. She saw a dog there, and she thinks that it turns out, no, she wasn't the witch. She was the dog watching.
Oh my goodness.
Watching the witch get burnt in the square in Paris. Anyway, when we came out, she's telling me this story about what happened. when she was in there, and I said, it's quite believable, really, isn't it? You look like a dog, you act like a dog. And she turned around and bit me on the shoulder, like a dog would. She just turned on me and bit me straight on the shoulder and left her teeth mark.
No, you're kidding us.
No, I'm not. It's true. It is honestly true.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Was that a suggestion, you see, put into her head?
Yeah. She literally
that's why
bit
she
me.
behaved like
And she behaved like a dog, yeah. But Mark was also, yeah. Well, both me and Mark have been hypnotized by a friend of ours, and she is very good, isn't she, Mark? Sheila. Mark. Have I lost him? Are you there? Bridget?
He's been whisked away. I'm here.
Mark. Well, but anyway, I'll tell you. But there's a friend of ours, Sheila. She went. She's taken all the courses and she's qualified and one through another. She's put me under a couple of times and she's put Mark under a couple of times, and she's been very successful. But also, Mark was done by somebody else, and that was a regression, and that turned out very interesting.
Well, that one was, this woman had contacted me through my paranormal group. She was writing a book. She was a hypnotherapist and was doing a book on past lives and was reaching out to certain people and sending us a regression tape and to play, and if we had any experiences to, let her know. She was going to include it in a book. Now, quite frankly, I never heard from her again. I have no idea if that book was ever written. I can't even remember her name, but I still had the recording. So I was trying it. I tried it a few times. Nothing ever happened. I'm hard to get into a hypnotic state, or even to meditate. I can't shut off my monkey brain. But one time it did, and I've told the story many times on the show, so, for those of you who've heard it before, forgive me, I'll try to give the abridged version. But it took me back to a past life in the 1860s, about the time of the American Civil War. And wow. I was a young woman or girl living in Boston. I knew my name. I saw myself in the mirror. Ironically, I recognized some of my features in this girl, but I knew it was me, and there was a lot of information that came through, even though it lasted just a few minutes. And I was able to, after the regression, I was able to do some historical research, and I found her.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that, because that's confirmation then, isn't it?
Yeah, because she herself was not really famous for anything, but her mother...
and her sister.
Well, and her sister, yes. Well, it was a big family. They were abolitionists during the Civil War, anti-slavery, and they... the mother wrote a song, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was a big, anti-slavery song, and it was the biggest song from the North out of the Civil War. And then her daughters, she had 3 daughters and 1 son, and 2 of the daughters was me, and another older daughter who, when I was talking with Irene and we were going over everything, we realized that Irene was the older daughter. She was my sister.
Wow. And that's why you've got such a rapport, you see, because there's a soul connection.
And Bridget, he found photographs, and the older daughter looks like me, and the younger one looks like him.
That's amazing, isn't it? I love that sort of thing, because it just gives us that little bit of encouragement and that little bit of confirmation that it's real. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had dreams that turned out to be past life memories. I dreamed once of being killed in World War II, running along an open field with other soldiers. I mean, I was an American fighting the Germans, and I got shot in the chest and died. And it wasn't until years later when the movie Saving Private Ryan came out, and I'm watching it, and it had nothing to do with the whole opening beach sequence, the actual landing in Normandy. That didn't faze me. It was later on when they were walking through the fields trying to find Private Ryan that the whole countryside, it just came rushing back to me that, oh my God, I died in Normandy.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
this is such a powerful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no other details came through, but I knew exactly where I was.
Fantastic. It's quite shocking that you get all of those details as well, isn't it? You said when you saw the girl that you were only there for a few minutes, but you got all of this information. And that's the thing, is you get the whole thing, don't you? You get the thoughts, the feelings, the smell of the place, what it feels like. Mm-hmm. Everything, so much information encapsulated. I think as well, when you're in a hypnotic state, sometimes time can play games with you, so it becomes a bit elastic. I used to sometimes say to people, if I had them in hypnosis for a long time, I'd say, how long do you think that was? And they go, 5 minutes. And I go, look at the clock, and they'd have been under for like 90 minutes. But it just felt like 5 minutes because you lose track of time. Right. Especially if you go into a past life. Well, it'd be quite interesting.
For me, I feel, especially with what science is starting to prove now, time itself is an illusion.
Absolutely.
All time is really happening at once. We're only perceiving it as being linear, and that's why time can do some really wonky things. From the paranormal standpoint, which we're going to get into talking, because I know you deal a lot with, on ghost hunting and paranormal, which, Irene and I have too. I think that time slips, as I'll call them, have a lot to do with a lot of times when people perhaps see an apparition, they think they're seeing a ghost, when maybe they're seeing a very much live person who just happens to be in another time frame, and you're actually able to observe each other for a short period of time when the conditions are right.
That happens to me all the time.
Like a glitch in the Matrix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now I want to reset the Matrix. Can we unplug it, and unplug the world and plug it back in again and do a reset?
I think that's going to happen anyway. I think we're living in a really powerful gateway moment, and it's what we're choosing collectively. The old thing's got to break down before something new comes.
True.
So I'm feeling as though the old is breaking down, and it's coming up to be seen. All the rottenness is coming up to be seen. People are waking up. And then what we collectively focus on will create. And it'll be the moment where we can create an evolution in our own consciousness if we focus on that. Because thoughts are really powerful.
That's very true. Very true.
And you can imagine if you've got a whole load of people having the similar thoughts, then you can co-create and weave something new. And we can really go into a reset. Not the
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
But a proper one, Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Yeah, it would definitely be nice, especially with what we've all gone through in the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They might let you out longer than 11 o'clock at night, Bridget.
They might do. They might regret it, though, my diary. Let her out.
Yeah, let her out. Free Bridget.
Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you: Have you been regressed yourself? Have you had your own past life experiences that you remember?
Yes, I have quite a few times. Because for a start off, when you train, you tend to work on each other and practice on each other before you're let loose on the general public. But also, you obviously know lots of people who are hypnotherapists, and I knew a couple of really good ones, and they took me back into various past lives. And also, funnily enough, I remember in the early days, before I'd even trained, I had a tape, like one of those old-fashioned cassette tapes. You remember those? I had an old-fashioned cassette tape I think I loaned from the local library, which was to go back into past lives. I remember doing that. One of the really lovely ones I did was with a colleague of mine who was training in a particular past life regression technique, and he wanted to practice. He was a very good healer as well, and he wanted to practice, and he said, would you mind coming up? And I got to write up all the notes. It's for my exam or whatever it was. And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, I want somebody who I know is going to go easily into hypnosis and understands the whole hypnotic thing. And I went, yeah, sure. So I rocked up at his house, and he had this healing room at his house, and I went on the couch, and he took me into hypnosis. And of course, being a hypnotherapist, when I first started, I was quite resistant to going into hypnosis. But once I understood it and saw other people go in and saw the benefit of it, then I was able to let go and go much, much deeper. And that was a really interesting, I don't even remember all of it, because it was one of those ones, I think I was under for about 3 hours. He was laid me down on one of those healing couches. So it was a long time, and there was a whole kind of complex process and rigmarole involved. But there's only snippets I remember, and he told me bits. But it was in the midst of this sort of, felt like I was being fast-tracked on a spiritual path. So we're talking probably about 15 years ago or so, and maybe a little bit, 12 years maybe. And I was about to go to this big sort of conference, spiritual conference, and he sort of took me into hypnosis, and I ended up going back into I don't know how it all happened. I don't know the details because I was under, so I don't remember it all. But he said something about, do we need to do any soul retrieval? And I said, yes, there's part of my soul that's missing. It's trapped. And he said, where? And I said, well, it's on another. Tell me what you're seeing. And I said, oh, it's awful. It's like a reptile. I hope I haven't got reptilian allergy. And he went, no, I don't think so. What's going on? No, it transpired that I'd been sort of living on another planet, because you see, sometimes when people go into past lives, they go to other planets where they've had lives on other planets, not just Earth. So I'd had this life on another planet. And I think it was years ago, probably around the time of Atlantis or something crazy like that. And at the time, you think you're making it all up. But as you know, you're not. And you know that from doing things like being the flower seller, and you find out that they were real and that sort of thing, and ordinary past lives. So then by the time you get to be shown one where you're on another planet, you just go, oh, yeah, okay. So I'd been living on another planet, and I had sacred information that was very powerful that wasn't to fall into the wrong hands. So I was trying to hide it, and apparently I had to hide a part of my soul in a crystal so they couldn't get to it, because I had the technology, if you like, or the knowledge to be able to do that, to put part of my soul in a crystal. So I'd put it in this crystal, and then they'd put it inside this kind of lizardy thing and stuck it on another planet, so I would never get it back again. Well, little did they know that I was going to go to my friend who was an amazing hypnotherapist, and he said, well, why haven't you got it back? I said, nobody's taken me into a deep enough hypnotic state and asked me. So off we went and collected this part of my soul that was locked in a crystal inside a kind of horrible lizardy thing on another planet. So that was quite a freaky one. But I've done lots of them. I've had lives as a Mayan warrior where I was poisoned and I couldn't move. Everybody thought I was dead and I was in immense pain, but I absolutely couldn't move. And when I did some research, they used to use this kind of thing that attacked the nervous system. I've had ordinary past lives as well. I'd say ordinary ones, in the last few hundred years. I had one in the 1920s as a sort of in Prohibition in America, in New York, where I lost my son, and it just completely broke me. I had another one as a black slave, a man in the Deep South. I've had quite a few lives in South Africa, which I've picked up. In fact, the very first time I was ever taken into past life, it was almost by accident. I'd gone to see this colleague of mine, and I had trouble saying no to people. Well, I tell you, I've done loads and loads of work, and I'm still quite bad at saying no to people. If I like them and they've asked me nicely, I find it really hard to say no to people. Anyway, I'd gone along. I said, look, I need to start saying no to people because I'm burning out, and I just need to be able to say no. And he took me into hypnosis, and he said, when does this start? And I just went, he said, I'm going to count to 3 and snap my fingers and you go back to when it started, something like that. And I said, oh, I'm a little kid and I'm staring at the coal bunker at where we used to live when I was a kid. And he thought, well, what's she talking about? And I said, it's a holding pattern. And then the next thing I knew, I was in this railway tunnel with lots of coal. It was exactly like the coal bunker. It was dark and black and sooty. And he said, well, where are you? And it was my first ever past life. And I was a man, and I was in South Africa, and I was a conscientious objector to the Boer War. I'd been, I think, either a doctor or a vet, but I was about saving life. And funnily enough, I remember him saying, look down at your hands and, tell me how old you are. And I looked down at my hands. Now, I had an older brother who died many years ago in an avalanche accident in 1976, and he was 12 years older than me, and he was a surgeon, and he had these long fingers, long, fine hands. I haven't. I've got short, stubby hands. And when I looked down in hypnosis, I could see these long hands, and I just went, these are my brother's hands. They're the hands of a surgeon. And that was the first past life I went into. But many of them, too many to talk about, really. Lots of them. And I've taken lots of people into past life as well.
Well, you just mentioned something that is very important to me, is the whole soul retrieval. And that's because a few years ago, I took a year's training as a shamanic practitioner. And part of that training was soul retrieval, and which I have done for a few people. And it's a fascinating, coming at it from a shamanic perspective, not exactly a hypnotic or hypnotherapy therapy perspective. With shamanic healing and practitioners going into the trance, going into journeying, what they call journeying into either the upper, middle, or lower worlds, and trying to find that piece of that soul, that piece of that person that broke off. And there could be several pieces that break off. There could be any form of tragedy in someone's life, anything that it's like or even for protective purposes, hiding a piece of oneself as a means of protection. And it's the experience of performing it is fascinating because it's not me doing it. I just allow spirit to do what it does, and I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, totally. Do you know what? A long time ago, I did train in soul retrieval, shamanic practice, and doing the journeying and the drums and everything, taking people into the underworld to retrieve bits of their soul. And that trance and journeying that you do in shamanic practice is very similar to hypnosis. It's like, imagine you've got different software in your brain, if you like. They're like different apps in your brain. And the hypnosis app is very, very similar to the journeying because it's all trance work. Well, so exactly. It is fascinating.
There's many different ways of doing the same thing, different techniques, but it's all pretty much the same thing. I'm sorry, Irene, you were going to say something?
No, I want to ask a question to you both, actually. Can somebody do soul retrieval on themselves?
That is a good question.
Do you have to have it done by somebody else?
I think, go on, you go first.
Actually, no, Bridget, you're the guest and the expert. I'm going to let you go first.
Well, I think with all techniques like this, it's very hard to do it on yourself because you need to be under enough to allow that subconscious to bring forward the information, but awake enough to guide you. Now, I think if you get very good at doing these things and you've practiced them, because I work with a thing called creative restructuring, which it's not dissimilar. I can do those on my own, but only because I've been in the game for, however many years, 15 years or whatever of doing hypnotic type work. So I can do those on myself. But if it's a really complicated one, I can't. I need someone else to do it. I think you can do shamanic journeying with a tape. You can record a shamanic journey for someone and they can take that journey and do it themselves. But I think most people need the guidance because they need to be in that relaxed space. And then they're not in a thinking space. It's like a different part of the brain that's being used. So I think it's much more powerful if you get someone else to do it and hold the space for you. And also, they are in an energy. And as Mark said, spirit is coming through you and guiding you. Because spirit comes through me and guides me in all kinds of ways, whether I'm doing hypnosis or whether I'm teaching or whether I'm talking to you, whether I'm doing space clearing or past life regression or whether you're doing shamanic journeying. If you can be open to spirit guiding you, they're showing you things that you might not notice. And you as the client, if you like, would never know it because it's in your shadow. You're not seeing it. So I think it's like lovely to have that extra pair of eyes and spirit guiding you. I remember one past life I went into. Again, I went back into that same past life I just told you about in South Africa, and I was on the run, and somebody else took me back into it. And I couldn't see why I'd gone back into it. And but because she was being guided and she was in a different headspace, she was able to say, oh, well, when you're on the run, you won't have anything to eat, will you? So you'll get hungry. Because I had this whole problem with my blood sugars years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, it fixed it. I never had that problem again. So she could see something that I couldn't see when I was in that space. That's my answer. But I'd love to hear what Mark says.
I think when it comes to an actual soul retrieval, I mean, there's many things that you can do from a shamanic perspective of journeying, that you can set your intention beforehand and then allowing like the drum beat, or if you listen to music or binaural beats or whatever you do to help put yourself into the trance. But you have to set that intention beforehand and then allow yourself, you're asking for your guides, helpful, compassionate spirits, those external influences, even your higher self, to step in and help guide you during this journey. Now, I struggle with it the last couple of years because I keep falling asleep. So I haven't really been able to do it very well, and I'm a little out of practice. But back then, you can set that intention and see what happens. But for doing an actual soul retrieval, my gut is telling me to have somebody else do it for you, because what they do is, whether the person is there with you physically, lying down, you're able to work over them and feel their energy. But I also feel working remotely is fine, as long as you're connecting with that person's spiritual energy and allowing spirit to work through you. You're just what we call the hollow bone, to allow spirit to work through you.
Yeah, so knowing me, Mark, as you do you think I could do it?
You could do it, but you're also very... you're a problem child. You would need to be able to give up some control, which I think is one of your issues. You're very good at a lot of the other things that you do, but it's allowing yourself to go into that trance state and allowing spirit, the general quotation spirit, which can mean many different things, but allowing yourself to just be the vessel and allowing spirit to do what it needs to do, whether it's your guides, whether it's your higher self, whether it's somebody else that's working through you and giving you the visions as you're going. Now, if you wanted to do healing work on somebody else, I definitely think
there is a slight connection here with remote viewing.
Yes, there is.
And trance mediumship.
Yep. It's all related. It's all aspects of...
I'm able to do all that.
The altered consciousness, because you're going into that...
I can shift my conscious just like that. Click of my fingers. So.
You can?
I don't know.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, no. What have you done? You changed our reality.
Liar.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I would think so.
It's interesting, though. I'm going to have a go.
Do you know what? I think, as I said before, they're like different bits of software in the mind.
Yeah.
And if you can already remote view or astral travel or any of those and channel or psychic ability, those are all using the intuitive mind. It's all using that or spiritual mind. It's all connecting with something more than you can see or hear or feel or taste with your five senses. So and you have to be open-minded to do that.
Yeah.
So I think as well, we've got different gifts, haven't we? Some of us use that gift more. The hollow bone can be spirit coming through you and guiding you to say the right thing in a journey, or the hollow bone can be you knowing where to place your hands in a healing to heal somebody. But it's all coming from that greater consciousness construct. But the fact that you've got a couple of bits of software, I'd call it, working, means you could probably make that shift to the other one, I would think.
See,
but it
well,
depends.
I'm going to experiment. I will try it out.
See, Irene, you don't have a couple of bits of software. You have the entire, downloaded package. But the thing with you, and I'm not criticizing you, the thing with you is there are certain times you need to be able to let go of control. And while you're excellent with remote viewing and using those scientific techniques for remote viewing, for some of this other stuff, you need to allow these other influences to come in and work through you and put yourself into that trance
what
state.
You're getting at.
Well, yeah, because whenever something like that starts to happen, you instantly shut down.
No, I don't shut down. I just don't like them interrupting me.
Well, if you do the work, you have to let it in. I'm
stubborn. I'm very, very stubborn. Well, I've been at this for 50 years. 50 years, Bridget. That tells you how old I am. I'm saying 50 years. It's over that.
You must have started young, Irene.
Oh, thank you. I did start young. Very young. Yeah. But no, I'm going to have a go, Mark.
Okay.
And I'm going to see what happens. And this is another thing. I'll let you know, and you can record it or make a note of it.
It's just, like I said, it's very important to set your intention beforehand, before you go into the meditation.
So, okay, when I've got to just behave myself then. Yeah, okay.
And also set that protection too, because one of the things, and I don't know, Bridget, if you do anything like that, is, you're asking specifically, I mean, I was taught to say, asking for my guides or my higher self or helpful, compassionate spirits. That way you're not having anything that you really don't want coming through. You're putting up at least that edge of protection.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's really important to have protection, and it's important to set intention. But also interesting what you said is, when you were in the habit of doing it, you could do it. Now you're out of the habit and you're falling asleep. And I think that feeds back to what I was saying about if you've practiced with a technique and you've trained in it and you've worked with it a lot, it's much, much easier to do it on yourself than if you're fairly new to it and you're not quite sure what the technique is. Because it's that thing, like when you learn to drive a car, you have to think about it. But when you've been driving for years, you can drive a car and talk to somebody else and you're not thinking about anything. You're doing it unconsciously. So if you know how to journey, do a shamanic journey or do hypnosis or any of those things unconsciously, because you've done it so often, you can do it in your sleep, you can do it automatically, then it's much easier to set that intention, hold the space, protect yourself and go in and do that journey. Because it's automatic. But as soon as you're a bit rusty with it or you're not sure what you're doing, I think it's too difficult to do that on yourself, because there's part of you going, oh, what's the next step? And then that takes you out of that space.
For me, my problem is I'm in an environment right now where I'm busy with a day job, and then I'm busy with a lot of personal things, and I kind of got away from all of the spiritual side of things for a few years, more grounded in, my job and physical things. And I'm trying to reopen myself back to it. I think I took a few steps backwards for a while, and now I took a shortcut, a deviation, and now I'm trying to circle back into it.
Mm-hmm. I think that happens to us all. Life takes over. Something else takes over and we get busy.
Now, I would like to change the subject here, if that's all right.
All right.
Is that all right? Dowsing.
Go ahead.
Dowsing.
Yes.
I had my house doused years ago, and the man drew me a little map of where all the ley lines were and where they crossed and one thing or another. And apparently this house sits on top of ley lines, obviously. And that's why I get a lot of paranormal things happen in this house. It's very, very active house. Nice active,
Yeah.
So dowsing, when did you get involved in dowsing?
Ages ago, actually. So the first thing I was saying earlier, when my daughter was a little girl, was I got involved in feng shui and energy sensing and space clearing, and very quickly moved on to dowsing for geopathic earth energies. Yeah. And I actually bought this book about geopathic stress and learnt how to dowse from a book. And then when I showed somebody I could do it, they went, "You're joking. Nobody ever learns how to dowse from a book." So this is where you think, well, I must have been able to do it in a past life or something, because it just seemed easy to me. And in fact, it was hilarious. I used to have these two old coat hangers. I never even bought a proper pair of brass dowsing rods with the nice wood handles. I'd think, oh, I'll save up and buy some of those. And I'd turn up with my, the ones you get
your
from
coat hangers, the wire ones.
Yeah, coat hangers. And I'd
the ones we used to use for television aerials to get the television
and
working.
I'd use those to dowse. And I could dowse, all sorts of things. And that's how I started off. And I even remember a friend of mine who lived out in the country somewhere, and she'd moved to this cottage, and there was a big service road that served her and the next two cottages, and somewhere in that road was their water mains stopcock, and they needed it to separate the water supply, and even the water board didn't know where it was. Nobody knew where it was. She said, "Can you dowse it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I found it straight away and marked it, and they dug there, and that's where they found it. So it started off with dowsing for negative geopathic earth energies and geopathic stress lines and black rivers and ley lines and things like that. Yeah. But then later, and that was with the rods. And I can dowse for water. In fact, you can dowse for anything as long as you kind of set it up. Again, it goes to intention.
It's an art that's been going on for hundreds of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, much later on, I learned how to dowse with a pendulum. And I started to then dowse to clear things, to heal things and clear things. So I did a thing called spiritual response. Excuse me, let me untie my tongue. It's a bit late here, I've been up since 3:30 and it's now 11 o'clock here. Spiritual response therapy. And it actually features in Red Dress. She goes and does spiritual response therapy, and she learns how to dowse. And you get a whole load of charts, and it's all about dowsing and clearing past lives and clearing demons and devils and aliens and different constructs and negative influences. And so then you're dowsing, you're also, not only are you seeing what's going on, you can dowse anything with a pendulum. Yeah. You can dowse whether this, you can even have these, what I call fan charts, where it looks like a fan on the page, and you write all these different things, and you go, okay, can you research all of these things? Maybe you could do supplements, research all these supplements. How many of these do I need? 3. Which 3 are they? You can dowse the whole lot. How long do I need to take them for? How many do I need to take? When? Morning, or you can dowse anything. And that was really powerful, because not only are you clearing things, but you're working with high self. You always work with high self with that. And there's a whole setup. And then because I was going even further in my spiritual journey, decided I wasn't just going to, it's interesting because Mark was talking about calling in your guides and your compassionate spirits. And that's what I used to do when I was a Reiki master. I used to call in my Reiki guides, and I used to have I had some beautiful shamanic guides as well. But as I progressed with my spiritual work, I started to work with higher and higher levels, if you like. So I was working a lot with divine names. And so then I would say, oh, well, I'm not just going to work with my higher self. Why don't we just align with the highest truth there is? And I'd use a sacred name for the God of truth or something. And then I'd go, okay, what's going on here? And then I would ask for it to be cleared, or I'd ask karmic debts to be paid, or I'd ask contracts to be cleared, or cords to be cut. So a whole other world opened up to me in terms of the dowsing. And I still use dowsing today. I very rarely would take on a client and actually do a whole session for them, but I'm often dowse for different people or for different things.
It's interesting. Very interesting. Have you dowsed, Mark?
Yes, I haven't. I actually have a...
I'm sorry, I thought you said, have I doused him to see what he's up to, what he's doing?
Oh, you were going to say I have, haven't you?
Uh-oh.
Oh. Sorry, I'll zip my mouth. Over to you, Mark.
Oh, no, I want to hear about this.
Well, when she said, "Have you dowsed, Mark?" You see, it's where the comma was in that sentence. I thought she was asking me if I dowsed you to kind of, see whether you were kosher or what vibration you were at, or did I clear you or anything. But no, I haven't.
I say, trust me, I could use a good clearing. Of course, if you did that, Irene would disappear. Oh, the demon in my life. I've used dowsing rods during some of my investigations, not to the extent that you have, Bridget, but I only have a very rudimentary understanding of dowsing, but I've used it to detect energies while doing some paranormal investigations in the past.
Awesome. Yeah, I've never done it for that because I just sense those things, but I know it can be done for that. Been talking to somebody else about that recently. It's a great way of tracking down what's going on. Now,
you mentioned a pendulum also as part of dowsing. I didn't realize the two were connected. Now, I have used pendulum. I've done pendulum work in the past as well, actually fairly recently. So is that considered a form of dowsing?
Yeah, I would say so. Because dowsing is you determining something, isn't it? Whether it's you determining where the water is or where the paranormal activity is or where the ley line is, or whether it's you determining whether you should take extra vitamin B, or whether it's you clearing something or working with a pendulum. Pendulums can also clear. That's the difference, I think. With the rods, you're just detecting where something is and the extent of it. You can work with rods to see how strong something is as well. Whereas with the pendulum, you can actually download healing from a higher dimension. So you can do more with a pendulum, I think.
Really?
And also,
it's all intent of energy, isn't it?
It's all intent of energy. And actually, in the end, Irene, what happens is when you
actual thing.
No,
you could pick up a pendulum from a two-bob shop.
Exactly. You can use a conker on the end of a piece of string. Yeah. It doesn't matter. In fact, I have used stupid things when I have been somewhere and I just thought, I haven't got anything to douse with. I'll just use this. Yeah. But I think eventually what happens is you become so sensitive. You know what the pendulum's or the dowsing rods are going to do. So you don't need them anymore. Then you can just work without them. Because you can kind of sense what it is without having to. Because all the pendulum is doing is enhancing your sensing of what's going on there.
And that's usually with your higher self. I was going to say that's usually with your higher self connecting with that energy. I mean, you already know the answers to everything. It's already there. It's just tapping into it.
Absolutely.
Your own body can read everything, Mark. Everything.
Say that again, Irene.
Your own body can read everything.
Yeah, that's right. So you can muscle test as well. Hey, that's another form of dowsing in a way. To muscle test kinesiology.
Oh, come on. Tell him that one. Go on, Bridget.
Well, your own.
I know where he's going to find his muscle.
I think we're getting a bit smutty here, Irene. I think I better shut up.
I just realised what I said. Sorry, everybody.
Never a dull moment here on the Paranormal UK radio show.
Now you're going to find out where you can which muscle. Oh, come on, Bridget, you take over from here.
I'm not a trained kinesiologist, I have to tell you, but you can muscle test, and there's different ones, basic ones that anybody can learn. So one of them is where if you put your arm out at an angle, and somebody else can press on it, and it'll tell you a yes or a no. So a no is normally weak and a yes is strong, but you can wire it up the other way around. And so you can muscle test for things like if you've got food allergies or if there's something going on with, something in your body, what's happening with your liver or what's happening with your digestive. So you can ask questions of the body and the body will tell you the answer. And that's one of the ways you can do it. And you can ask, again, when we go back to what we were talking about, the pendulum, you can say, I often do muscle testing for things like you go to a restaurant and there's a great big menu and you can't decide between two different things. I really can't decide between, these two different things. I'll muscle test quietly under the table, because there's another one you can do where you make a circle with your finger and thumb. And then you can either put the other finger and thumb inside the circle and pull it open, or you can take the one finger and push it through where the finger and thumb are together. And if you can't get that circle open, it's strong. And if it opens up easily, it's weak. And then obviously when it's weak, it's normally a no. And when it's strong, it's normally a yes. So you can do it that way. And another way people often do it, beginners often do it, is they stand up and close their eyes and they just feel their body. And if it's a yes, they'll sway forward. And if it's a no, they'll sway back. Sometimes you get reverse polarity, so the opposite happens. And you can do all kinds of things with that. And a proper trained kinesiologist can muscle test just about anything that's going on, mind, body, and spirit. And you can also do things like with the body, like listen to the chakras. One of the ones I do is your heart chakra. When it's something that's right for you and it is your compassionate spirits that are working with you and the whole energy of the place is good, you'll feel your heart chakra open like a rose. And when it's something that's dangerous or it's not the right sort of thing, you'll feel it close up like an anemone or something, or a Venus flytrap. It suddenly withdraws and closes up. And you can feel that within your own body. There's so many signals the body gives us, I think, like hairs going on end and goosebumps. And there's lots of different signals, but we've got to learn to read them and tune into them and listen to them.
I've just had an image in my head of all these people who, after they've listened to this show, standing there and either swaying forwards or swaying backwards.
And then wondering whether it was that pint of beer they had earlier at the pub.
Yeah. Oh, dear. So there you're learning something, Mark.
Yes, learn something new every day. Now it's my turn to change the subject a little bit. Talking about the rise of the divine feminine. And, you know, we have been living in a very long time of a very masculine dominated society, and the divine feminine, which has actually been a part of human history for thousands of years. And there's still a lot of societies that are, there's still some matriarchal societies out there, but lately the divine feminine has been kind of reintegrating itself into society. And what I'm really interested in is, it's mentioned here in your notes, is the Pistis Sophia, which I have heard of before from the Nag Hammadi Library. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's a massive subject. We could probably take out a whole evening about it. So the Pistis Sophia is, as you said, from the Nag Hammadi collection of texts. And they were found in a place called Nag Hammadi in Egypt in the 30s, I think it was, around the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they are incredible documents. Now, obviously, there are some bits missing and things like that, so we don't have the full thing, codex they're called. But the one that I study is the Pistis Sophia, which has got a commentary by Dr. J.J. Hurtak. And it's the most incredible book. There's actually 5 books of the Pistis Sophia, and they each deal with different things. Pistis Sophia is Coptic Gnostic. You'd have to not have too many drinks to say that. Coptic Gnostic. So it's the Coptic,
me
which
trying
is
to say that.
Yeah, it's the Coptic Egyptians that spoke Greek. And the Gnostics were these kind of spiritual people, a bit like the Essenes, who and Gnosis is about knowledge, higher wisdom, and higher understanding. So Pistis Sophia means faith and wisdom. That's what the name translates as, faith and wisdom. And in the story of the Pistis Sophia, faith and wisdom are personified as this woman called Pistis Sophia. And the story in book 1 starts out with the risen Christ. Well, the Bible ends with Christ dies and then he's resurrected 3 days later into his body of light. And then 50 days later, all the disciples get the flame of the Holy Spirit over them and they're all speaking in tongues. And then that kind of wraps up the Bible. But the Pistis Sophia takes it up 11 years after the resurrection, when he's still in a body of light and he's teaching his disciples. And the whole of the book is a discourse between him and the disciples, but the women disciples are there. And the most prominent disciple who's asking the most questions is Mary Magdalene. So she's asking questions of the risen Christ. And what he starts off doing is setting out this very vast cosmology so that there's a much bigger understanding of how creation is set up, if you like, that we've got. It talks about the region to the right and the region of the left. And the region of the right are the unsullied worlds that are still whole and complete and in the higher light, which we'd call maybe the farther universe. And then the region to the left is where we live, and it's in this fallen space with these, it's called the Aonic Worlds, and there are 12 eons, and she lives in the 13th. And those 13 eons are a mixture of good and evil, a mixture of good and bad. And the bad side is run by this one called self-willed, which is all about being selfish, but it's actually a very powerful fallen god, fallen Elohim. So he sets that up, and then what happens is Pistis Sophia, who's living in the 13th eon, which is a mixture, is cut off already from the higher wisdom, but wisdom doesn't fall. This goes into Kabbalah now, so it parallels all kinds of other traditions. So wisdom doesn't fall, but then it does, because she's there on the 13th eon. She's wanting to go up. After the 13th eon, we go into the mid-heavens or the midst, and then it goes into the pure light regions. And her passion, she's seeking for the light, and it's a metaphor for us. She's seeking for the light. And what happens is she's mistaken by the lower light. And so she falls down into this Aonic world. Not only that, but they work in pairs, and she leaves her pair up in the 13th eon. So now she's disconnected from our higher self, like we are very often. She's fallen into this mixture of good and evil. Then the evil self-will takes all her light away from her. She's drunk from the cup of forgetfulness. She's in a pickle, really, and she's trapped. And so the first book is about her petitioning to the light to be rescued. And in doing that, she brings the light into this system of things. But what she's representing is not only faith, which is a bit thin on the ground in this system of things for most people, and wisdom, which is also fallen and negated in this world by those fallen lords of light. Not only is she representing those, but she's also representing the divine feminine, because the divine feminine carries wisdom and understanding in the tree of life as well. So these things are, with the people want to keep us as sheep. They want to keep us in the dark. They don't want us to have higher wisdom and higher understanding, which is part and parcel of this lower Aonic world that we find ourselves in. So the books are really then setting out who all these awful fallen gods are, and what their names are, and who they are, and what they do, and how to get past them, and how to get through the gates, and how the soul can move back up into the pure light, and how Pistis Sophia is rescued, and how the Christ light comes in. So it's a long book. It's about 800 pages long, and it's quite dense, but it's incredible teaching. And for me, even if you don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of it, we're living in a time now where this divine feminine is coming back, because I think what's happened is people have belittled or denigrated or made small what the whole notion of femininity. So anything that's soft or gentle or kind or wise, compassionate, teamwork, intuitive, helping one another, supporting, nurturing, nourishing, all of those things are kind of, we dismiss them in our society, because we dismiss them to go on the hero's journey, to go on the masculine journey of going out there in the world and being successful and making money and all of that stuff. So all of those things, we kind of put them down a little bit, but actually they're the most powerful things. And so I think we're returning now to a place where teamwork, working together, supporting each other, helping each other, forgiving each other, being compassionate, being gentle, being kind, bringing through that higher wisdom, talking about the things we've been talking about this, in this session, talking about the paranormal, talking about remote viewing and journeying and soul retrieval. All of that really is part and parcel of the intuitive mind or the spiritual mind. And the spiritual means you're filled with the spirit. We talked about the hollow bone and the spirit and the compassionate spirits. And the spirit, for me, is really the Holy Spirit in all its forms. And we're all part of that, and we've all got that within us, the spirit within us. And so it's being filled with that spirit. And these spiritual things are therefore part of the divine feminine, and they're starting to come into the fore now as people wake up, and people are waking up and going, hang on a minute, all this war, all this competition, all this trying to win, all this comparison, all this I've got to get to the top and I've got to have the biggest, shiniest car and all of this stuff, where's it got us? Are we actually happy? And this is part of what I was saying about we're living in this really interesting time where we could choose to become more aware and go into a new evolution of consciousness, which means getting that feminine, intuitive mind in balance with the masculine, which is much more rational and much more about doing, whereas the feminine is more about being and reflecting. So it's one of my great passions. I could talk about it for quite a long time, but I'll stop to give you a word in edgeways.
Well, I'll share something with you. When I first started on my own spiritual journey, going back about 30 years ago, there was at one point, actually about 20 years ago, when I first moved here to New Jersey from Los Angeles, I was learning a lot about different types of spiritualism, including Native American and shamanic and a lot of different things. And one of the things that kept coming up for me was the need for balance, balancing the masculine and the feminine energies within myself. Not that I grew up, one way or another completely, like on one side or the other, but balance was a key learning point for me. I did a journey once where I traveled upward and I found myself in the good Lord, I'm having a brain freeze here. The Great Library. You know what I'm talking about.
The records.
Akashic Records.
Akashic Records. Thank you. And I walking through this gigantic building with all these, marble pillars, and there's, the ceilings are like hundreds of feet high, and there's all these books and scrolls and whatever. And I found myself going up to this one small section, little tiny section. That was me. and I knew I was allowed to pull out 2 scrolls or books. And the first one I pulled out, all I knew is I had lived a past life as a Roman emperor. Nobody famous, nobody really big, because there were a lot of Roman emperors, but and that was, of course, the very masculine, male dominated and control type of existence. I pulled a second scroll, and I was a lady in waiting during the Middle Ages. And so I went from a man of power to a woman of servitude, and it's showing both extremes. And I instinctively knew that I needed to take both of those extremes and integrate it into myself and balance out the masculine and the feminine energies to have a more internal balance within myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. We've all got masculine energy, we've all got feminine energy, and we have to get it into balance. And I think both of them have been wounded. The feminine energy have been wounded because we've tossed it aside and said that's not valuable. We've devalued it. And the masculine energy's also got wounded because it's got too big and out of control, and it's too thrusting and, win at all costs type of sort of thing. So they both need to be healed and brought back into balance, because we actually can't exist one without the other. And it's not about swinging on that pendulum from one extreme to the other. It absolutely is about balance, because when you've got the feminine and the masculine in balance, you've got the left brain and the right brain in balance. You've got the rational mind and the intuitive mind in balance. You've got doing and being in balance. And you come into that yin and yang sign of balance. And in that place of balance, that's when the higher wisdom can come down, because it needs that foundation of balance within you. And I think we need to do that individually, but we also need to do that collectively in society. So Really interesting you should say that, and I agree with you. And interesting what you said about the scrolls and those extremes. And I think this is it, that a lot of people on the spiritual path, we've lived the length and breadth of it all. We've been it all. We've been the emperor, and we've also been the slave girl, because we've experienced it all. And that's part of the integration process of this life that we're living in, because I think we probably signed up to be here right now because of everything that's playing out in the world. So yeah, balance, really important, Mark.
Definitely. It was that in itself was a very interesting experience and an interesting lesson that really affected me moving forward in my life, and actually made me feel more whole than I had throughout my entire life prior to that. So, yeah,
I talk a lot in the Bone Circle training about both the hero's journey and the heroine's journey. And that's another way of looking at that balance between the masculine and the feminine. The hero's journey we know quite a lot about. Joseph Campbell and all the sort of films like Star Wars and The Matrix are all hero's journeys. And the hero's the man, and he goes out there and he has to fight all the demons, and he nearly dies, and then he comes back and resurrected. But the heroine's journey is about how we've cut ourselves off as women, particularly from the feminine, in order to step into the masculine world. Then we've lost sight of what our real values are, our core values. So we have to go back in, and we feel like a dryness, like a Pyrrhic victory, like we've made it, but it's not how we thought it was going to be. And that's actually how we find Katie at the beginning of Red Dress, my novel. But she's lost sight of who she is because she's in the masculine world, and she's got this urgency to reconnect to the feminine. And that's the internal journey of the heroine's journey. And that's then at the end of those journeys, you come into balance, and then you do feel more whole.
It seems to me that in this modern Western society that there is a lot of pressure for women to live the masculine role or the hero's journey, and almost pushing aside, because everybody is equal and everybody has their parts to play, but everybody, it is accepting those energies, accepting who you are. And I think right now there's a lot of, and you can tell me I'm wrong because I'm the guy here, but it seems like there's just so much pressure for women to put aside the femininity, the feminine parts of themselves, and live that masculine journey. Go for the bigger jobs. Go for, go on the hero's journey. Even in the media and all the movies and everything, with the changing out the heroes to heroines, but they're still doing the same kind of hardcore action, masculine type of journey, and it seems to diminish the greatness of the feminine side, and look at all of the superhero movies that there are right now, or even action movies, that are making like the female John Wick like characters. It's a lot of shooting, a lot of action, a lot of killing, like going on these journeys, but it's missing the point of the feminine journey.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's really part of that heroine's journey is exactly what you've just said, that Western society particularly puts a lot of pressure on women to be successful, even though it may be almost hypnotic in the way it's done. So it's not even overt, it's covert. We're conditioned. We're conditioned to go, oh, we've got equality now, we can have it all. We can go out and break the glass ceiling. We can be the prime minister if we want to be. We can be the president. And we can. There's nothing stopping us. But I think what's unfortunate is we've always been equal, but we're not really equal. We're complementary. Masculine isn't worse than feminine. Feminine isn't, but neither is better than the other. They're complementary. And that's what we've got to learn, is to play to our strengths. And yes, I'm not saying to people they can't go out and have a fabulous career. Of course you can go out and have a fabulous career. Go for it. But what's happening with that career is that the way that the structure is set up in society is it's not really set up for women. Because for a start off, women are cyclical. We have menstrual periods, and we have PMT and stuff like that. And also we, at some point, a lot of women want to have a family and want to have children. But the way the career path has been structured up until now doesn't really allow for that, because it's been structured for the sort of 1940s, 50s and 60s man who's gone to work to earn the bread, and the woman's at home doing all the housework, and all he has to do is go out and be successful in his job, and she's doing everything at home. And then all of that changed with equality. Says no, women can go out and do all of that. Yes, but they don't have anybody at home doing all the things that the 1950s man had. And also the structure isn't such that you can say go into a very top high-flying job and maybe job share that with another woman who's also a high flyer, so that you can take some time out to be with your children, for example. So the structure doesn't allow for the feminine to... I'm sorry, I'm just going to cough. Hold a minute.
That's quite all right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm back. I just thought, I'm talking so much here. So the structure doesn't allow for the women's way of being. So then what the woman has to do is fit into the masculine structure to do what she wants to do to be successful, which is no problem. Women are brilliant. They have done it. They have conquered the glass ceiling. Absolutely brilliant. And if that's what you want to do, I do believe that whatever any of us want to do, we should be able to pursue that. Nobody should be making judgments on that. But a lot of women take that journey, get to a certain point, the body clock kicks in, they go, I think I want children. Now that's set up problems because they're stressed, they're getting older. And even if they don't have problems and they have the children, now they've got to hold down the job and try and be a mother and try and be a wife and I think they're juggling too many things. And that's what leads to burnout. And I think there's a lot of burnout within women who are high flyers, unless they've got somebody behind them that's really looking after everything at home, in which case they've just stepped into the role of the masculine, which is fine if that's what they want to do. There's no judgment there. But I do think that we're subtly conditioned to believe that that's what we have to do, otherwise we're less than. We're going to be judged if we don't go out there and become CEOs or start our own business or, go into politics or whatever it is that a lot of high-flying women do. Somehow, if you're intelligent and you've done well, you're expected to go on. You're expected to become a doctor or a surgeon or whatever it is you're expected. There's an expectation because now you're equal and you've been given this equality and you've got this opportunity and you're clever and you can do it. And on the surface, it looks great because it looks like we can have everything and we can have anything and everything because we can still have children, be at home, still go and do feminine things and have a career, just like a man. But actually, what that does is cause burnout because it's just too much. We're juggling too many different things, and then we lose sight of who we really are, and the work-life balance goes out of whack. And I know that from my own sorry experience, I have to say.
Well, with what's happening in the world currently, we'll use this as an example, and again, staying out of politics, I'm talking about the way our societies have become, and there are many different cultures on the planet right now: Western culture, Eastern culture, Middle Eastern culture, African, South American, all these different cultures. And in a majority of these cultures is very, when a child is born and grown up, it deals with the childhood conditioning. It's conditioned by the culture. You become a product of what that culture is. In Western society, it seems to me that within the last 40 years, there's been a change in the type of conditioning. And I think, in a way, here's my tinfoil hat side coming out, a lot of it was done on purpose. I think we've been seeing a lot of societal conditioning trying to drive Western society in a certain direction. And I still think it's taking us away from the connection that we really need to be making, which is being more in tune with ourselves, less of the ego-oriented, more of the spiritual-oriented, and I think it just makes us more slaves to the current, money-driven society, power-driven society. That's what everyone keeps striving for.
Yeah, do you know what? I agree with you, absolutely. And that's what I meant about a subtle, covert conditioning, because it's just somehow insidiously crept into Western society. Even nowadays, when I was a kid, probably when you guys were kids, you'd go out and you'd play and you'd climb trees and maybe you'd fall over and hurt your knee, or you'd go and play whatever you play with your friends. You go around to your friend's house, you might go out on your bike somewhere, maybe you went to camp, maybe, all sorts of things. But it was a connection to play, the idea of play, and you being creative in that play and expressing yourself fully and having fun. Imagination, exactly, and connection to self and what you liked and what your passion was and what you wanted to express. Because if you didn't want to go and play Cowboys and Indians, you didn't go. You went and played whatever you wanted to do with your group of people. And you had a connection to nature and you had a connection to time, because you never took a watch, did you? But you knew you had to get back for supper. Whereas now, a lot of children's lives in Western society are very regulated. Like they've got to get up and then they've got to do this and then they've got to get their sandwiches from lunch and then they've got to go to school and then they have lunch and then after school they go to violin lesson and it goes on and their whole life
football practice
kind of mapped out. So I think that's how subtle it is. And so the way that the whole education system is in Western society is constantly putting us in boxes and putting us in a schedule and disconnecting us from ourselves. And then a lot of people are on their phones or on computers, or I'm honestly sounding like some kind of old fogey, but I do believe that there are very powerful human values in connecting with yourself, being in tune with yourself, connecting with nature, using your imagination, all of these things. If we're not careful, we're going to lose them in Western society. And I agree with you. And that's the insidiousness of it. So that it's almost as if we're put on a conveyor belt at quite a young age until we're so conditioned we just keep ourselves on that same conveyor belt. And then we wonder why when we get to 40, we're burning out. Because we've been scheduled like crazy to perform and to be successful.
That's what bothers me with like the younger generations now, because of, when the internet first started, and even with science fiction, when they started predicting a lot of these technologies, which we've gone way beyond what they predicted back in a lot of these science fiction novels and TV shows, to the type of technology we have today, nobody anticipated I'll just use the word, the evil side of it that comes out, the negative side, using to control people and children. Not only children, adults, so immersed in their damn phones. I went away this weekend, and every time we went out somewhere, more than 3/4 of the people I saw that were glued to their phones. They sitting at a table, they're glued to their phones, teasing. My niece, she's sitting there on the phone the entire time, talking to her friends, doing this, doing that.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everywhere, Mo.
And it's, you're so disconnected, because even if you're like interacting with somebody on the phone, and it's ironic, here we are on Skype on the internet and we're talking to you in South Africa, and this part of it is wonderful because we're able to talk and share ideas, and yet we're still going to miss that real human connection, that one-on-one, because we are separated by distance. And people are so distracted these days, and they're distracted by the wrong things. And this is where some of that societal conditioning comes in, because if you look at the things that they put out there and tell you what's important, when it's really not, the horrible reality TV shows, the getting people, catering to the lowest common denominator, not allowing people's imaginations to grow, and being very disconnected from nature, from our own planet and spirit. I mean, sure, there's the talk right now about, climate change. We got to do something to save the planet. And yet we continue to still do the exact same things that we've always done. And nobody's really connected to nature or really turning within and looking within themselves as a spiritual being. Even religion does, most religions, organized religions, they talk about spirit, they talk about your soul, but then they throw in all the do's and don'ts, and if you don't do what we tell you, you're going to go to hell, or you're still separated from spirit, from the creative force. You're not part of it. They keep you separated on purpose. And so, I always wonder, what are we going to be able to do to break this cycle in mass? I mean, individuals like ourselves, as we're talking, we can see it and we can know what to do, but I wonder, what are we going to ever be able to do to get beyond this? Is it going to take another 1,000 years? Is it going to take a big natural disaster, or is it going to take another reset like what happened 12,500 years ago with the great catastrophe called the Great Flood or whatnot? But civilization had a big reset and we had to start all over again. Is that what we're going to need? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Gosh, that's a massive question. I agree with you on just about everything you've said there around how we've got disconnected, and that's all to do with that dopamine reward of getting a like on your Facebook post. And then you've got the horrible side of that with, I just heard about a 12-year-old who committed suicide because they said that they was interested in a girl at school and the girl had snubbed him, and he committed suicide. There's kids that get into terrible depression and all kinds of eating disorders and all sorts of things because they didn't get enough likes on their photo. Little girls are being very sexualized very early. And what's happening to women's bodies is another horrific thing as well. And this is all part of what I would say is all part of the beast system playing out. You touched on it there. Disconnected. I mean, we're not even connected to our food. A lot of children don't even know what a chicken looks like when they're just eating chicken nuggets or whatever. They don't know what a cow looks like. They're eating burgers. There's very highly processed food. We're living in Wi-Fi and 3G, 4G, 5G coming in. We're electromagnetic beings. We've got an electromagnetic body. Our heart and brain work on electromagnetic impulses. There should be in tune with the Schumann resonance, which is the resonance of nature. And we're bombarded constantly by this stuff. We've got additives in our food. We've got glyphosates on the earth. And we really are poisoning our own backyard.
GMOs.
And GMOs and all the rest of it. And it really is, there is that underbelly. But I think that there's a silver lining to that, because I think we're going through what we would consider the end times, and we're seeing it all play out. And it's that crack of the tail of the serpent power. And it's all got to come up for us to see, to go, hey, hang on a minute. And that's why we're going through these interesting times. But I think it's going to do is shake more people awake. More people are waking up to this. Even as we speak right now, people are waking up to this. People are going, hey, hang on a minute. Why have we been in lockdown for so long? Hey, hang on a minute. What's going on with the environment? So I think it's waking people up to an alternative way. And I do see, for every kid that's stuck on their phone and depressed because they haven't got enough likes on their whatever it is, they don't even go on Facebook, their own social media platforms. There's other kids that are going to Rudolf Steiner schools, that are climbing trees, that are going camping with their parents. And so there's a whole alternative culture coming up. And I think that things are being speeded up. Consciousness is being speeded up. Everything's being speeded up now so that it's coming to a head. And that's where we're going to rebirth a new way of being. And for me, that's all about raising consciousness. Raising consciousness is about becoming more aware, becoming much more aware of the bigger picture, of the connection to source. And as you said, that goes way beyond organized religion, which is all do and don't, and it's all very concretized and you're unworthy, and going much more into the spiritual side of things, where there is a connection to something much greater than us. A divine source, divine being, even if you just see that as nature, a lot of the indigenous cultures just see the beauty and sacredness of creation itself. And it is beautiful if you take the time to look up from your phone and look at the waterfall, or we had a gorgeous double rainbow the other day here where I live. Absolutely stunning. Just to stop and look at that rainbow or listen to the ocean. We were talking about that earlier. To look at the sunrise or the sunset or the cloud formation. Just take time out to reconnect to the bigger picture is what's going to start waking people up, becoming aware, becoming awake. And I think there's a big awakening coming up. And we're going to see it goes back to polarizing. You're going to see this polarizing. Some people are just going to become more and more and more stuck in that technology and stuck in that me. It's all about me world and what can I get? While other people are going to wake up and go, hey, hang on a minute. We do need to do something about the world. We do need to do something about humanity because we want to enjoy our lives. And actually, what we've been doing isn't working. So what is going to work? Actually getting together and understanding and learning and growing and discussions and helping each other and using our imagination and being playful and following what our passions and skills and talents are rather than what we've been conditioned to follow. So I guess, it's difficult to find an answer, and we probably need a whole group of people coming together. But maybe that's a starting point for discussion.
I agree. Let's lighten this up a little bit. I know we got into some pretty heavy discussions.
Heavy stuff, Mark.
Yeah.
How about the Ghostbusting?
That's exactly what
you call Ghostbusting.
Yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about your paranormal Ghostbusting experiences.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So as I said, I kind of years ago started off with feng shui, and that got me into working with energies, and that got me into dowsing geopathic stress, and that got me into space clearing. And, you go to people's houses, you clear the space. But I think we learn and grow, and we're presented with bigger steps all the way until eventually, and I'm still talking about, I don't know how many years ago, 15 odd years ago maybe, I pitched up at this place where it was a client that I'd already done her office where she worked and I'd already done her house. And then she said, I've got a flat that I rent out. Could you space clear it for her? And I went, yeah, sure. So I turned up with all my space clearing gear. And I used to take flowers and candles and crystals and dowsing rods and all sorts of bits and pieces and make a little altar and do a few prayers and call in the directions and call in the elements and call in my guides, spirit guides and stuff like that, and space clear. And so anyway, I get there, and the first thing is I noticed that the energy there's, I don't know if I like this. I could just sense it wasn't right. And as I started going, and then you tune in a bit more. So it's like honing in, like when you're honing in on a radio station. So I'm honing in, and there's this one room, and I'm thinking, something going on in this room. It was a small flat, and there was a big wardrobe, and I thought, something going on in this wardrobe. And I could see it in my mind's eye. I could see this dog scratching away in this wardrobe, and I thought, what is going on? And you get it. You have to ask, and then your spirit guides will tell you, or you're shown, if you make that intention. And so what I was shown was that it was a little girl who had drowned in a pond, and the dog had been trying to save her. And in trying to save her, the dog itself had drowned, and neither of them knew they were dead. So, I thought we've got to sort this out. And I spoke to them psychically. I just spoke to the little girl, realized what had happened, and called in Archangel Michael, which was my kind of go-to angel. Still use Archangel Michael today. Called in Archangel Michael and asked for him to...
I call him Mickey.
Mickey, yeah. Somebody else I know calls him AM, Archangel Michael, AM.
No, I call him Mickey.
Yeah, so he's the favourite, isn't he? So in he comes, and he says, you've got to explain to the little girl. So I explained to her that she's passed away. She's passed over the other side, and so is her dog. And she has to go to the light. And so she's worried about Mummy and Daddy. I said, no, Mummy and Daddy have long gone, and they're waiting for you in heaven. They're waiting for you. So this whole conversation, and I gave her a big hug, and we made sure she was okay. This is all in spirit, obviously, not physically. And then got Archangel Michael to take her up to the light. And then the dog followed. And off they went. It was almost like the clouds opened. And then I saw the parents waving, and I saw her running towards them. And then the clouds closed, and it was done. Space cleared the rest of the house. So afterwards, the the lady that owned the flat said, well, what did you find? So I felt a bit sheepish, because you think, oh, I might be making this up, because that's what happens when you first do something like this. You go, oh, I'm bonkers, I'm making this up, oh, for goodness sake, you know. So anyway, I thought, oh, I better tell her. So I told her, and she said, well, that's very interesting, because the tenant of this flat has been complaining of noises in that room and a funny smell, and has said that it sounded like an animal scratching in there. And then we did a bit of research, and this apartment block had been built on the land of one of those big old manor houses that had indeed had a pool in the garden. If I did a bit of research, I'm sure we'd find out who the little girl was. So that was
this in the UK or in South Africa?
Yeah, it was in the UK. It was in London, in West London. Near Osterley, up that way, West London. So that was then. And then after that, of course, I kept being given things like that. I remember even going on holiday to, this is in England, in Norfolk, and we rented a little Coast Guard's cottage. And again, funny old feeling in the bathroom. I didn't like it. And I went up there to go to the loo, and I thought, I don't like the feeling in here. Lit a candle, did the whole thing, tuned in, and got the... You know, some of those old houses in England, the bathroom used to be maybe the bedroom, and it's been converted, because it was one of those big bathrooms that used to be a room. And it turns out it was an old man, and he died there, and something had happened, and he hadn't been able to tell somebody something. I can't even remember the details, but again, resolved it, sorted it out for him. A lot of it is about acknowledging and listening to their story, because they're here for a reason. They're roaming around here, either because they don't know they've passed over, or because there's something that happened, like an injustice, or, you know, they got murdered and somebody thinks they just died.
Unfinished business, yeah.
It's unfinished business. It's always unfinished business. So you need to actually hear them and acknowledge their story. That's what I found. And I also used to work a lot with, when I was did a lot of healing work. I said when I was a healer, well, I'm still a healer, I just don't do much healing work, but I often used to see past lives where I was healing, and sometimes I would see entities and ghosty ghoulies there. And I remember one girl came, she'd had a whole problem with her lymph glands. I think she'd even had cancer of the lymph. And when she came to me, as I started doing the healing, I could see this great, like a big African spear stuck right up into the armpit. Oh. So I took it out, etheric, obviously, took it out and healed it up. And then the warrior came, and I had to have a whole conversation. And then it was like this person it was something they hadn't meant to kill them. And so there was a whole conversation to be had. So it's always a conversation. And then it kind of escalated to one day I was with my kids, and they were little then, and they're older now, they're adults, but they were little then. And we'd gone on holiday to Sussex, and we went to Battle, where the Battle of Hastings took place in 1066.
Yeah, I know it well. I was born in Sussex.
Were you? Whereabouts?
Near Arundel, a little village called Amberley.
Oh, I know.
The village was called Amberley.
Yeah, my grandparents used to live around that area. Anyway, so we went to Battle, and we're just going as on holiday as a family. We start walking round, and I go, "What's that?" And I could smell the smell of the battle. And then I could hear the battle, and then I could see the battle. And it was horrific. I nearly, was nauseous. It was really nauseating. It was horrible. And I thought, oh, no, what is this happening? I'm just on holiday. And I got this voice from my guides, you need to clear it. And I said, no, I can't do that. Nobody's given me permission to do it. They said, you don't need permission. And I said, we're giving you permission. Will you please clear it? It's part of your work. And that was the first time. And I ummed and ahed for ages thinking, am I allowed to do this? Because, we always ask for permission, or somebody pays you and asks you to do their house. And this was like it was English trust or whatever. So I got, no, you need to do it.
Well, that's very interesting, because even in all the spiritual work that I've done, you're always, you don't do anything unless you ask the person permission. So I find that very interesting. That's Your guide said, nope, screw it, do it.
Well, they've done that with me too, Mark. That's happened to me before. They
just step right in and say, nope, you need to do it right now. Forget permission.
Well, it is permission, really. It's just permission from upstairs, isn't it, as I'd call it?
True.
You're getting permission from upstairs.
The highest permission.
That's right, the highest permission. So that's what happened. So I space cleared Battle. Obviously, the kids were, we don't know her. And my husband was walking about 3 paces behind, and I was muttering under my breath and calling in different names and violet fire and all sorts of stuff. So, and then, of course, again, you think you're mad, and you get to the end, and it's done. You think, I've done it now. And I'm walking away, and I felt this huge presence behind me, and I thought, what is that? Turned round, and it was a massive horse with a guy on the, in armour sort of thing on the horse. And I just thought, and this horse was really close. It was in spirit, but it still feels very close. And he just went, thank you. And I said, it's my pleasure. And then he turned and he rode off, and he rode up into the sky, and they all followed. And I just thought, this is amazing. And after that, all sorts of stories. Once I moved to South Africa. So I've been in South Africa for 9 years now. And when I got here, again, I got spirit upstairs saying, you know what you did about, you've got to start clearing bits of land. So I started clearing bits of land and bits and pieces here, but I don't do it as a job, and generally speaking, it's if I'm called to do it. So somebody might ring me up and say, will you space clear my house? And I'll just go, no, I'm sorry, I don't do it anymore. Go and find a Sangoma local shaman. There's plenty of shamans that will space clear. Or they'll go, oh, no, I've tried a shaman. Will you please do it? And I might charge them a ridiculous amount of money, and then they won't do it. But every so often I go, oh, yes, tell me a bit more about that. Oh, no, I do need to come. And I normally do it as service work. I don't charge. Or they'll give me something, a donation. And some of those things I've done have been hectic because the land in South Africa is very, very different. So England's very, very ancient land with loads of bloody battles that have been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. And lots of psychics and witches and all sorts of people who probably cleared space and cleared land. And it's almost as if it's composted down, if you know what I mean. Like when you put stuff in a composter, and by the time it gets at the bottom, it's just rich and black. And that's what England's like. It almost draws you down into the soil. South Africa is completely different. For a start off, it's the cradle of humankind here. So, Africa is where our DNA began. So it resonates with your DNA. But then you've got all the indigenous tribes and all of their shamanic practices and their Sangoma stuff. And then all their witchcraft stuff and all the ancestors. So you've got that. And then you've got colonialism. So you've got all the Dutch coming in and the English coming in. And then you've got all the atrocities that they committed because there was slavery and hangings, and they mistreated the local black people. So a lot of nasty things that I've seen since I've been here. It's not a regular thing. As I said, I'm a spiritual teacher and an author, really. But every so often I get called by spirit to go and do something. I haven't done anything for a while. The last one I did was a retreat. Somebody had bought this retreat, and they were worried about the energy there. And this was maybe a couple of years ago, and it was about an hour and a half's drive out from where I live. But there were like people chained down in the cellar and had been mistreated. But I think probably the most interesting one for your listeners, we were talking about paranormal, was a house that I was told to live at. Again, spirit guided me there. I had nowhere to live and needed to find somewhere quick. And I was going back to England to see my family. So I had 3 days, and I thought I'll stay with a friend on the sofa for 3 days, and I'll sort it out when I get back. On that day, I was looking at dog sitting for somebody. I was walking these dogs. My phone rang, and this woman said, and I didn't know what it was going to be. And this woman just went, you don't know me. My name's Vanessa. I own this place. I hear you're looking for somewhere to live. And I thought, how did you know? Anyway, I went to see this place. It was the weirdest house I've ever seen. It looked like a hobbit house. It was designed by Rudolf Steiner. And it was at the top of a long winding road. Yeah, it was a long winding road up the mountain, unmade up road, a dirt road that swung right by the side of the township and the squatters' camp. And then behind it was this just like massive rocky mountain behind it. There were snakes and eagles and all sorts of things there. But it was an amazing place, and the people that lived there were amazing. And this was a self-contained flat as part of the house. It was probably one of the few times in my life where I've laid down to go to sleep and I thought, I can't sleep here. There's too much going on. There's too much going on. I'm not going to sleep here. I was asleep this night. And so I mentioned I'm going to space clear the flat, you see, that I lived in. And the woman who owned it said, we've been looking for someone who could space clear this place properly for ages. We've had loads of sangomas. Nobody could do anything. I was told by spirit that I had to stay there for 6 months to anchor the energy. It was that bad, because it talked about time glitches right near the beginning. Well, this house had been built with these crystals in the foundation, big, massive crystals underneath the foundations, and they'd been programmed. But they'd been programmed in like 1970 when it was built, and we'd gone over the millennium. And so they were out of sync and out of time. And I had to sit in meditation and work with my guides for a long, long time. And I had to dismantle things in a very elaborate way, because it had all been set up by these Sangomas, where they work with the ancestors, and they have what's called booby traps. So if they put something in place and you try and undo it, it'll backfire on you. And I had an entity of some sort, pushed me over in the bathroom, and there was a big oak bookshelf there with clothes and things on, and I nearly knocked myself out. And I think it's only because I work a lot with divine names, and I had that protection in place that I wasn't knocked out. And I had to sit and work out how to undo it. It was like doing a jigsaw puzzle. And then what I found out was, because of these crystals, it had left a glitch in the fabric of space-time. So all these things were coming in which weren't meant to come in. So there were literally aliens buried in the walls who'd been stuck there for ages because the time thing had shifted.
Oh, my God.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And we had to, it took me, I worked with the owner. Obviously, he wanted me to do it. And I said, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. And we had African drums, and we drummed, and we did a lot of work on that place. And it took us an entire day, and it wasn't that big a house. It took us an entire day, and then there was an annex to it where they used to hold like music. It was like a music venue, and we had to clear that as well. So the whole thing took us 2 days, and after that, I was told I had to stay there and meditate every day for 6 months. And during those meditations, I had to sing and chant sacred names and divine names, and bring in Archangel Michael, and just constantly putting light around the whole place, constantly putting sentries around.
Continuously, or you had to do it at least once a day?
At least once a day, twice a day if I could, until I'd anchored it, because it had got so bad. And there was all sorts of stories about people who'd lived there and gone mad and gone psychotic, and it's not surprising. Yeah. Because the energy was all over the place. Yeah. So that was a really interesting one.
Wow.
Well, you know what they say over here, don't you?
What's
talking about ghosts. I'm not going to frighten anyone, but you put your arm out straight and you're touching at least something.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because it's such an old country. It's so dense and so populated as well.
Yeah. Around every person is 100 ghosts.
Yeah.
Sleep well, people.
Well, I hate to say, on that note, we have reached the end of the program. So, Bridget, can you tell people where they can get your book, Red Dress?
You can get Red Dress just about anywhere that books are sold. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Waterstones. You can go to your local bookshop and order it, and you can buy it online. Best place to go is johnhuntpublishing.com, which is the publisher. Search for Red Dress by Bridget Finklaire, and that will give you links to where you can buy it. It's also on Amazon, or you can go to my website, bridgetfinklaire.com, and there's a page on the front page and also on the books page. It will tell you links where you can buy it. And you can also contact me if you're interested in any of the work that I do.
Well, Bridget, it's been absolutely fantastic talking with you tonight, and I think we could have easily gone another hour or two, and so we may have to save that for another show, because I know there was a lot of different things we could have talked about.
Definitely come back.
I'd love to come back. I've had such a laugh. I've had such a great time talking to you, and it's brilliant to, as you said, sit round and have a chat, the three of us, because I think a lot of the time we're singing off the same song sheet, and that's always refreshing, isn't it?
That's why we like doing the show like this.
Sorry, Mark. Both Mark and I have been looking forward to this interview, so we definitely have to come
bless
back.
you. Thank you. I'd love to come back. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And so we've been talking tonight with Bridget Finklaire, and we want to thank everyone for tuning in to another edition of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK radio network. We will be back next week with a brand new show, so be sure to tune in. In the meantime, Irene, where can people find us?
Everywhere, people. Everywhere.
Well, everyone, you have a great night. Irene, you too. And we will catch you all next time. Have a good one.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.